Hi, welcome to Movie Review Mom. I have a very special guest who's going to be joining us today. His name is Greg Lynch Jr., and he is the producer and co-writer of The Last Captain. He is a dear friend from high school. I've known him since forever, and it's so fun to watch his career and to see what he's been doing. So I wanted you to meet him, and he's going to tell you all about his newest project, as well as some fun stories from former projects as he was working on other films. And you know me, I love movies. So join me as we talk to him about The Last Captain and some other fun stuff. Okay, welcome. I am here with a dear old friend, old meaning we've known each other since high school. This is Greg Lynch Jr., producer, co-writer, friend extraordinaire of The Last Captain.
Woohoo!
Hey, Greg.
Hey, Trina, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for joining me. I'm trying to remember where exactly we met in high school. Were we both on the speech and debate team?
I was thinking we met in junior high, but if it was in high school, yeah, we were on the speech and debate team together.
Wow, did we know each other in junior high?
Did you go to John F. Kennedy?
Yeah. Oh,
yeah, we met in high school. We were in the plays together in high school, in junior high school.
Wow.
Your family moved in, and it was all of a sudden, who are those two girls that look so alike that we can't tell apart? It was you and your sister.
Yeah, I'm a twin. I have a twin sister. So yeah, in junior high, we would swap classes and play all kinds of pranks on our teachers. But this interview is not about me, it's about you.
That's right.
And your new movie called The Last Captain. So I want to ask you a bunch of questions about your career and your inspiration, and of course about the movie, The Last Captain. But first we're going to do a speed round just to kind of warm us both up. And so viewers can get to know you.
I'm ready. Shoot,
okay.
Fire.
Go, fire away. Speed round. Pirate or ninja?
Ninja.
Batman or Superman?
Batman.
Peanut butter or jelly?
Can I have both?
Nope,
Peanut
you have to
butter.
pick one.
Peanut butter.
Okay, mullet or bald head?
Ooh, bald head.
Simpsons or Family Guy?
Simpsons.
Disneyland or California Adventures?
Disneyland.
Adventure or cozy pajamas?
Ooh, adventure.
Monk or mafia?
Monk.
Pumping iron or pumping gas?
Pumping iron.
Wrinkles or plastic surgery?
Wrinkles.
Yeah, you know, look at us. We're both wearing old man, old lady glasses now. It's been a while. Should we tell them how many years?
No. Whew. But I've been wearing the old man glasses for a long time.
The minute I turned 40, all of a sudden I had to wear glasses. All right, let's make these questions a little harder.
Okay.
Spend the day naked or spend the day asleep?
Ooh, asleep.
Rich and ugly or poor and good looking?
Rich and ugly.
Oh. True love or $10 million?
True love.
Aw. Beautiful house and ugly car or beautiful car and ugly house?
Beautiful house.
4 feet tall or 7 feet tall?
Ooh, 7 feet tall.
Speaking of house, I look at your pictures that you post on Facebook, and you take your dogs for a walk and have the most incredible views. Are those from your backyard, or are you hiking somewhere?
I live in Los Angeles, and I live a little northeast of Los Angeles, and we're on a hill called Montecito Heights. And the reason we chose the house was there are 2 parks on either side of my house. So I can either go out to one trail, which is called the Radio Tower, which is where I take videos. I've been taking a daily picture of downtown for the last 2 or 3 years at the sunset time, mostly in the fall when the sun is actually setting. And then if I go in the other direction, there's a beautiful park. Well, not a beautiful park, but there's a park there, and we walk the dogs and kind of a similar view. So although I'm in Los Angeles and everybody has these, oh my God, Los Angeles traffic, and just we got these two parks on either side of me that kind of make it really bearable where I'm at.
Well, and those pictures are gorgeous. You've got the city, the mountain. It's just beautiful. Wow. Nice life you've got going on, Greg.
Thanks.
Okay, enough of the speed round. Let me ask some questions. And actually, we'll start off with just for our viewers. First of all, how and where can they watch the movie The Last Captain?
Well, currently we're on Vimeo. We're on Vimeo On Demand. So if you go to vimeo.com/on-demand/The Last Captain, you'll find it there. And in the next day or two, we should have it up on Amazon Prime Direct. So those are the two places right now where you can go and purchase the film and watch it at your leisure, or rent it, which is probably a little bit cheaper.
Yeah, well, actually, I looked on Vimeo last night. It's connected to my Roku, so I can do it from my bed and the big screen. And it said rent or purchase. So it's nice to have the option.
Yeah, some people, like, I noticed I was looking at my statistics there the other day, and somebody rented it and then watched it 5 times in the 48-hour window.
Wow.
I don't know what the heck was going on there.
Well, that's awesome and impressive.
Sure.
Okay, so tell my viewers what you've been doing for the last years since I've seen you at a reunion. Have you gone to high school reunions?
I went to the one. It was funny because I left our high school after my sophomore year and went to Ireland. And that one year I went to 2 high school reunions because I went to the one for Monte Vista, and then I went to the one in Ireland for the Crescent College Comprehensive.
Wow, that's right. It's weird because you were only there at high school for the 1 year, and yet you made such a 2-year, freshman, sophomore years. Yeah, I think we had this conversation at a reunion because everybody just assumed you were with us for 4 years because your spirit was with us or something. I don't know. You made a huge impression on all of us in a short amount of time.
Well, I was the annoying guy with the camera. Every event was that, who's that idiot with the camera again? So since high school, I've been a photographer. And then when I went to Ireland, actually, I was a photographer at my father's company. And then when I went to college, I got a degree in screenwriting. And I went down to Los Angeles to get my big break. And I ended up at the Corman Studios building sets. And for the next 25 years or so, I built sets. I built sets on Batman Returns, Spider-Man, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. The most recent big one I did was probably Angels and Demons, where I built all the churches that they had in there that they were recreating from Rome. We went in, and I think one of the best stories we had was when you're on a soundstage, you kind of think, well, what did I do on this soundstage before? And this was stage 30 over at Sony Pictures over in Culver City. And so we're saying, oh, I did Planet of the Apes here. And somebody else said, oh, we did this. And it was actually, if you really want to go back, it was where, I can't think of the woman swimmer, that was her stage when she would do all those beautiful, I can't think of her name. But anyways, so we're standing there. Ron Howard walks up behind us. And he goes, oh, yeah, I shot Mutiny on the Bounty on this stage. And we're like, okay, we're done. We can't play this game anymore.
Wow. Well, you mentioned Mr. and Mrs. Smith, which I love. That had to have been tricky because they destroyed the sets.
It gets even worse. So I built, you remember in the movie where they both go out into the desert and Mr. Smith is down in the desert and Mrs. Smith is up on the hillside and there's a caravan coming and there's a big shootout and everything. And there's all these explosions. So there's a big battle. That was originally my set. But we had built it on a soundstage over at Fox Studios. And we built, it was supposed to be in Colorado, in the mountains, in the snow. And so we built this elevated freeway. We hung a semi-truck off the perms. We bit rocks and bent girders. And it's supposed to be after this explosion. So it was all twisted and he comes down underneath the thing. So we built this huge, elaborate thing. We had sculptors in. We must have had 200 or 300 people working on this set. The camera crew comes in and goes, we can't light this in here. We're not going to shoot it. Take it all down.
Oh, no.
So that was it.
Oh, that's awesome. I know you've worked on a lot of films. Who would you say has influenced your filmmaking and your storytelling? Because you also wrote or co-wrote The Last Captain, didn't you?
Well, it doesn't come through, but probably my biggest influence in movies was Preston Sturges, who made screwball comedies back in the 40s, and I picked up on a lot. For some reason, his use of dialogue in cinema and film were just tremendous. That shows how. And I think obviously his favorite film of mine would be Sullivan's Travels, which was all about actually Hollywood and filmmaking and about a director that wants to make really important pictures, but he's known for making comedies. And he's like, well, we want you to make comedies because those are what makes the money. And he goes, no, I want to do something important and something serious. And through the course of the Sullivan's Travels, he finds out in this dark and terrible world, comedy is what we should be doing because, people really need a relief and a little break. So.
Oh, do you have a favorite film of all time?
Well, if it's not Sullivan's Travels, it's The Best Years of Our Lives by William Wyler, about post-World War II when all these three soldiers are coming back and how they're reintegrating life. After the horrors of war, they're coming back to this small town and seeing how they can do and, how they can reintegrate. And it's really funny and it's really tragic. And you see these three soldiers and, you see a captain and you think, oh, he's an air boy. And you see a sergeant that, he must be some rough and tough guy. And you see a third man that he's actually lost his hands in the Navy, and these three guys. And then you come back and you've already formed impressions of them. And the director immediately breaks them because the really rough and tough sergeant, he runs a bank. The flyboy is, just some, has no job, and he didn't have a job before he went in the Army. He doesn't have a job after he comes out of the Army. And it tells their whole life story, and it's really incredible how that all goes through.
I have to check that out.
I will. It's, you get a film education. That's the problem. You get stuck with all these old films. I mean, if you want to talk about Buster Keaton for the next hour or two, we could do that as well.
Actually, that's really true because people that have actually studied film or have a degree in film of some kind, their favorites are always some of those old classics. And people ask me all the time, what's my favorite? I see way too many movies to even pick one. So I don't even have an answer. But now, here's a question for you. If someone were to make a documentary of your life, what would you hope would be some of the big accomplishments and the big highlights of that film?
Well, I mean, it would have to be The Making of the Last Captain. This is like the culmination of however many years we want to say that we've been trying this. Because when I got out of college and I went into making movies, I was in the construction end of it, but it wasn't quite the end that quite the spot that I wanted to be in, because you come to Hollywood, you want to be a director, right? So about 5 years ago, I realized that on a movie set, there were only, I was on the path to become a construction coordinator, which is the gentleman that's in charge of building all the sets that you'd see in a movie. But if you look at the credits on a movie, there's only one construction coordinator and one director. So it seemed if I was going to, really try and push for something, I should really, follow my dream and become a director, because it would probably take the same amount of energy to become a construction coordinator. So I said, okay, I'm going to start investing more time in being a filmmaker. So I work with my friend Gene Ching, who runs a martial arts magazine called Kung Fu Magazine. And he holds a tournament every year, and I started filming all the martial arts tournaments. So I have, we filmed hours and hours on his website. You can see, every year we'd put together 60 or 70 martial arts videos. And so, so my big thing was, if all that hard work has finally paid off at this point. So if we're going to be making a documentary about my life, this is kind of be the high point now. Hopefully there'll be more high points further down the road. But right now, the release of my first film is pretty important.
That's super exciting. And I'm so proud of you. We had another classmate who went on to direct a film. Steve Guggenheim came out with his movie, The Meshuggah Nutcracker, last Christmas. Did you ever see that? So
I saw it live on stage.
Oh, that would be even better. Well, I only saw the film. I did a little movie review. I need to interview him next. So it's so fun to see classmates go on and do great things.
Just, we've known each other since junior high school. I've known Steve Guggenheim since elementary school. He was my neighbor. He lived across the street. And our fathers we met pretty much through Indian guides. And we were in the California State Boys Choir together, too, where we traveled up and down California singing in the boys choir.
Wow, that's so cool. So now, how did you meet Doug Nichols, who helped direct this film?
Doug we had a mutual friend that was also a fencing coach. And he said, "Oh, you two guys are down in Los Angeles together. You really should, hook up." So we would go out and see movies. And Doug, his career, he came down like me. He came down to be in the film industry, but his main focus has always been animation. And for his 25 years, he worked for Pixar. He worked for Disney. He worked for for any one of the big animation studios. You'd ask him what he did. He says, "Well, I did the snow for Mulan's feet in the movie Mulan," and he just a ton of stuff. I mean, his last big hurrah was the last George Lucas animated film that came out. So he was working for Lucasfilms. So we were buddies and friends, and we had with fencing, and we would fence together. He moved into a warehouse space near me, and we built a climbing wall for his apartment, and we helped put up the fencing strips so we could fence in his building. And we kind of lost track for a while because he moved back up into the Bay Area to work at Pixar. His wife works at Pixar and Google. And we reconnected because we were at breakfast, and he says, "Oh, he was working on the history of the West Coast fencing," because a person he knew had this large archive of fencing materials, and he was help organizing it. And he showed me the brochure, and on the brochure it said, "Oh, you should come check out our website, which will be appearing in 2015. I said, "Well, Doug, it's 2016. Why don't you have a website up?" And I had some facility with websites, and that's kind of that's how we started putting together the West Coast Fencing Archive website. So after a while, we're doing this, and Doug had done a lot of research on the subject of our film, George Pillar, and from the archive. And he went to the man that puts up all the money for the archive, and says, "Look, this is a great story." And that man made the mistake of saying, "Well, for $1 million, I'd watch that as a movie." And Doug and I said, "Well, if you have that much money, we'll make that movie for you." So that's kind of how we got that together. And it wasn't $1 million, but it was one of the big problems in making a movie is like, where do you get the money? And here was a man that said, "Well, I have money." And we said, "Well, we can make a film," not knowing if we could, but we were going to at least try. So Doug came up with all the research, and then I started researching, and we went off on this journey.
That's so cool. And you went off to Hungary to do the interviews and to get footage.
Well, it was funny because as we started to do the research, we had kind of one of those, "Oh my God, somebody's already doing this" moment, because I saw a sign that they were having a symposium on the life of George Pillar. And I was thinking, "Oh, somebody's already doing this." And then I looked, and well, they were just talking about him. They weren't doing the movie. But fortunately for me, on this list for the symposium was 10 people that all knew who George Pillar was. And I started calling all of them and set up interviews because obviously here were the experts. One of them was actually even writing a book on George Pillar. And I said, "Hey, could you send me the book?" He's like, "Well, it's in Hungarian." And I said, "Why don't you just keep that book? Because I don't read Hungarian." But it was fortuitous. So we found all these people because, I mean, the majority of Pillar's life does take place in Hungary. And the idea was, here are all these people that knew of him and could really speak to his life and what he did for Hungary.
Yeah, and I really love so much of the movie obviously takes place in Hungary, but I really love that you incorporated his experience with World War I, World War II, and the Hungarian Revolution, and how all of those wars really impacted not just him personally, not just the fencing team and the Olympic team and all that, but really the country as a whole. And that was kind of an unexpected aspect of the movie that I really appreciated and learned from.
Well, I think you use the life of George Pillar to find out about history you really didn't know about.
Yeah,
I mean, when we talk about World War I and World War II from the perspective of Americans, it's what did we do? How did we have, and so when we started this, when I started doing the research and reading the books, it immediately became very important, that what role Hungary played in these wars, because it was kind of in the epicenter. It was caught between East and West in a lot of these situations, and and by studying Pillar, you learned all that history. And the beauty, I think, of The Last Captain was we kind of touch on maybe a lot of history that Americans or people in the United States haven't really, are too familiar with, or are parts of the stories that they don't know yet. So yes, we hear about this young man that was in the trenches in World War I, and then he's fighting the Russians and a little bit of the Germans in World War II, and then during the Hungarian uprising, again, he's fighting the Russians again. Well, not so much. He's said, I've had enough of the Russians and I'm leaving.
Yeah, it was fascinating because, as you mentioned, Americans are so uneducated on basic life that happened in Europe. And how did you find Hungary to be now when you went? Do you feel like the people were sort of still recovering, or does it seem more vibrant and reborn?
Well, it seems great. It was a wonderful experience. It wasn't one of the countries I'd been to before. I've been to a lot of, and I think when we would walk around, you could almost still see some of the damaged buildings, because Hungary, I mean, if you're a satellite country of Russia, let's say, you might not get as much money to pay for infrastructure as you much. But again, there's a lot of vibrancy, and we maybe had an accurate feeling for the country because we were there for their biggest holiday celebration of the year.
Oh,
they were celebrating. My dog is.
I can see the curtain moving.
That's my girl. Anyways, they were celebrating their biggest holiday of the year, St. Stephen's Day, or St. István, which was the founder of Hungary back in, I want to say 980 or 8. It was 895. And so it was 1,000 years ago. It was 1,000 years of history. And so we were there, and everybody was celebrating, and they were having fireworks at night, and they had big parades. So it was like, wow, this is okay. This is pretty fun. But I've had people always have, fencers that have gone to Hungary, and specifically to Budapest, because it's a fencing country. And Americans have gone there to train, and they've always loved it. And it's, there's a different food, a different culture, and it's a little bit off the beaten path, too, for Americans. It's like, we'll do the tour of Europe, we'll go to Germany, we'll go to France, we'll go to Italy, but there's Hungary and Budapest, which is another big historic country that we might not know as much about as we could.
It's on my bucket list, but I haven't been there yet.
Go.
I will. Well, in fact, I have a travel website, shameless plug, emptynesstravelhacker.com, and I'm going to share this video with them. So what travel tips do you have for American tourists who want to go to Hungary?